Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, teaming up with SG1 Sports to bring you season opening analysis of the Big Ten, all the Week 1 previews. Even Rutgers. So we had to pour over this information. We had to think about Rutgers football, so you have to bear the misery with us. This was a miserable football team last year. 1-11, 0-9 in the Big Ten. Didn't come close to winning a game. Yeah, they actually scored 10 against Michigan State late in the season. The last game of the season only lost 14-10. That would have been the one near miss, and they actually played a Northwestern team that went to the Big Ten championship game. They only lost that game 18-15. I'm trying to come up with something positive from last season. The defense wasn't horrible, horrendous, awful. If you're starving for football on Week 1 on that Friday night, you get a matchup between UMass at 4-8 last year, and again Rutgers at 1-11. That will be on the Big Ten Network at 7:15 on that Friday night, August 30th. Let's talk some UMass football first. UMass has a pretty light schedule. Rutgers is actually one of only 2 true Power 5 conference teams on UMass's schedule, the other one being Northwestern. So that's 12 games, only 2 against the Power 5. Rutgers is so bad that they're actually one of the easier teams on UMass's schedule. UMass has a new head coach in Walt Bell coming in from Florida State and Maryland. He's been the offensive coordinator at those 2 programs recently. Don't necessarily know if that's a good thing. He's got a 2-quarterback system right now. Actually, they lost the 2 quarterbacks that were very productive last year in Ross Thomas and Andrew Ford. Those guys accounted for 23 touchdowns and 3,000 yards passing. They're replaced by a senior in Michael Curtis, who's played a little bit, and Randall West. So they're vying for the starting position. We don't know who we're going to see against the Scarlet Knights. Wide receiver. This was the star of the team by far. Andy Isabella, now currently in Arizona Cardinals camp, caught 102 passes last year for the Minutemen for just under 1,700 yards and 13 touchdowns. Well, he's gone. Their leading receiver coming back, so Isabella caught 102, 28 catches from Sadiq Palmer. So a bit of a letdown at the wide receiver position. They lose their quarterbacks who threw 23 touchdowns and threw for 3,000 yards. So the Minutemen coming off a pretty dismal 4-8 campaign, and guess what? The strongest portion of this team last year was throwing the ball downfield, and they've lost their quarterbacks, and they've lost their best wide receiver. Their top 2 running backs are gone, and the rest of the rushing yardage coming back doesn't even total 200 yards. The defense was abysmal for the Minutemen last year. They gave up 43 points per game, 489 yards on average, and they gave up over 55 points 6 times. That's how bad they were. If you're going to watch this game and you want to look out for the Minutemen's best defensive players, you got to go to linebacker Chinedu Agbana and also the cornerback Isaiah Rogers. Those would be the 2 best players on the defense coming back for the Minutemen, again at 4-8 and trying to improve under Walt Bell. Let's talk some Rutgers football. Chris Ash has to show improvement this year. He's probably going to be out of a job. The Rutgers administration, even after this season, would have to buy him out at over $7.5 million. It would be almost $9 million right now had they considered that 0-9 in the Big Ten and 1-11 is a fireable offense. But they would have owed him all that money. But it would have been understandable. 7-29 is Chris Ash's record. And Rutgers does not play daunting non-conference schedules. Last year, they lost to Kansas by 41 points in the non-conference. They only won 1 game, and that was against Texas State. Chris Ash is 3-24 in the Big Ten. That's a 125 winning percentage. Their quarterback, this is how bad Rutgers has been offensively under Chris Ash. During his 3 seasons, they have ranked number 127, number 121, and number 130 in points per game. Their quarterback, Artur Sitkowski, is going to be a sophomore. Maybe he's improved. Maybe he's going to get some help as well. But as a freshman, he was the lowest rated quarterback in the country out of 113 passers. Now, he may get pushed a little bit by McLean Carter, who comes in from Texas Tech, who was not nearly as talented as some of the quarterbacks that he competed against, but he was always showing up against good competition in the Big 12 and putting up some numbers. I would think McLean Carter might be the guy that they need to supplant Sitkowski unless he's improved tremendously. But Sitkowski led the nation with 18 interceptions and only completed 48% of his passes. All right. This offense, again, was so bad, we could go to almost any statistic, but here's another one for you. They were last in FBS football in gains over 10 yards, in gains over 20 yards, in gains over 30 yards. Okay, 3 of their top 5 pass catchers are back, and they've got a running back duo that they're going to rely on heavily, I would think, especially in a game like this where they should have superior athletes in bulk and size along the offensive front. They have their 2 top running backs coming back, and Raheem Blackshear at 586 yards rushing, and also Isaiah Pacheco at 551. All right, they've got a new defensive coordinator in Andy Bew, who comes in from Maryland. This defense, I mentioned, they only gave up 18 points to Northwestern, 14 against Michigan State, 20 against Penn State. They were 89th in the country in points against at 31 per game. The one highlighted player who could vie for Big Ten honorable mention defensively would be the cornerback Damian Hayes, the senior. Rutgers and UMass. Well, Rutgers, again, has shown us in recent years that they can lose to all sorts of group of 5 teams. They've done it consistently every year. But I'm going to go with the Scarlet Knights at home against UMass. Again, UMass loses its wide receiver play, its quarterback play, and that was the best part of this team last year, and the defense was atrocious. And Rutgers played a little bit of defense last year, and they've got a freshman quarterback with a capable backup quarterback coming in from Texas Tech in McLean Carter. Rutgers 24, UMass 20. That's your final score in Week 1 in Piscataway. We'll be back with more Big Ten previews next on SG1 Sports Big Ten.